Hello and welcome everyone to another Cleveland Sports Bros podcast. I'm Matt alongside my brother Nick. Nick, how's it going today?
Great, ready to talk Cleveland sports.
Yeah, we'll give a real quick update on the Browns. I know, our fans of the show and most other Cleveland sports fans are probably a little bit tired of hearing about them. They're now off to a 1-4 start, and just things don't seem to be going too well. So, by now you probably know the results. They lost 34 to 13 to the Washington Commanders, against a pretty solid looking rookie quarterback, and um, don't really like to talk playoffs at this point, but it's almost certain they're not going to make it, barring, they probably only have to lose two more games for the remainder of the season, and I don't see that being very likely at this point. Nick, what do you think?
Yeah, I saw a stat. There's like a 2% chance they could get in. Teams that have started 1-4, uh, and they haven't even played a division team yet. So that's hard to believe. Cleveland, uh, the Browns go on the road next to Philadelphia, and just imagine if they come home 1-5. How do you think the fans would react if Watson gets sent out?
Yeah, I don't know. It just I'm sure a lot of fans are looking for a change. Look, I don't think he's the only problem. In fact, he's played well at times, and the team as a whole just hasn't performed well enough to win. So, unfortunately, it's kind of a downer. The season seems pretty much over so early, um, and you know, so uh, these last three games were supposed to be an easy part of the schedule. Now, Washington maybe is a little bit better than we had thought, but they're going against a real solid team in the Eagles, and I just don't know. I don't see that going very well either. I mean, in football, in the NFL in particular, you can win any given week, any given Sunday, but I don't see it happening. So if it's okay with you, Nick, we can talk a little bit more Guardians, although that game yesterday didn't go too well.
Yeah, but the Guardians are still in a good position. Every team on the AL and NL side are even at one game apiece. So it now comes down to a best of three. Cleveland will play uh tomorrow and Thursday at Comerica Park. And tomorrow's starters, Alex Cobb, who has been dealing with some blisters on his hand, has now fully recovered. I know he hadn't seen the mound in the last month of the season, so that makes me a little concerned. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, he looked good. I think it was his last time out against the Pirates. So we know when he's on, he's good. It's just a matter of, he hasn't pitched all that much this season, at least not in the majors, and he's dealt with some of these kind of lingering issues and injuries, that a pitcher needs. I can imagine it being really painful and maybe even not possible to pitch, with these types of injuries. So, um, look, uh, I think we all know this, that if he gets in trouble early, thankfully they have the best bullpen in baseball, um, to hopefully be able to bail him out if things go out. But I have confidence in him, and if he can give him three or four solid innings, that's definitely a win.
Yeah, and so the first two games were shutouts, one win by Cleveland, one by the Tigers. And what happened yesterday, as far as the pitching and defense goes, the Guardians they survived up to the point when uh Skubal was still on the mound and removed from the game. And we all know the Guardians' bullpen is stronger than the Tigers. Cleveland, they had their chances. They had two double plays they grounded out into, I believe it was Jimenez and Fry. And, you know, one of the situations, John Kenzie Noel was a base runner on first. And that's kind of just unfortunate since a bigger guy may not be able to slide into second base before the throw. Um, but they had their chances, and it came to top, the top of the ninth when Clase had already entered the game in the final out of the eighth, and he pitched to Corey Carpenter and allowed three straight sliders, or pitched three straight sliders, and gave up the 3-run home run.
Yeah, and what'd you think of keeping him in? In his carry Carpenter, just checked. Yeah, uh, I like the decision to keep Class A in. He's been the best reliever in baseball all season. You can even make the case that he's the best pitcher in baseball. Obviously, that's up for debate, but I thought you got to go with your best pitcher. It's easy to second guess it, maybe, but what do you think about that?
Yeah, I didn't mind leaving him in, and Clase even pointed out after the game he's maybe not done it a ton, but he's done it 2 or 3 times in the regular season, so he felt good about it. And he knew he hung a slider, and he said he'll correct it. And Stephen Vogt uh, and all the other players have confidence in him. They're not just gonna sit him down because of that one mistake. If you think about it, uh, not once did they have to pull him from a game in the regular season. That was the first time I think we've all witnessed it.
Well, yeah, I guess I didn't know that for sure, but it sounds right. Like I believe in Class A for the rest of the playoffs, and look, if he's gonna have one rough game every 50 games or so, that's I think they'll be all right. Unfortunately, it came at a bad time, and really, I mean, it was really one pitch that Carpenter did a great job getting after. I said earlier that I think Cobb getting 3 or 4 solid innings is a win, and what I mean by that's the team will take that from a pitching standpoint. But to win, obviously, this team's going to have to put up runs. We obviously had the big first inning in game one, um, but only scored one other inning. Now it's only been 2 games. But Nick, what's it going to take for this team to get a little bit more consistent runs across the board to actually be able to win a game? Because obviously, got to score runs to win.
Yeah, I don't have a ton of stats in front of me, but I do know that Jose Ramirez in particular uh plays well at Comerica Park, and not just plays well, but I think he enjoys it. He got a big outfield home plate to outfield grass, like 400 feet. And if you can hit one in the gap compared to like Progressive Field into right center or left center, Jose, if he uh, gets running, could maybe turn an ordinary double into a triple and just get your base runners on and have everyone behind you uh, come through and drive you in. We know Naylor had a double yesterday. Unfortunately, he couldn't be brought home. And I know in the moment, I was listening to Tom Hamilton saying, if you're gonna make school pay, it's gotta be now. And unfortunately, they couldn't do it. But that's why school's one of the best. It's arguably gonna come down to him in Class A on the American League Cy Young Award.
Yeah, so let me hopefully these stats are right on their dimensions. So I think I have about 420 to center,
Hmm.
370 to left center, and 365 to right center. Does that sound about right? And it's a big outfield. We know that. So for a team that likes to run and for guys that hustle, obviously you like to think both teams are going to hustle in the playoffs, but maybe this bigger outfield can bode well for this team and the style of baseball they play. So, uh, and we also know we have a good, solid defense. I mean, that catch by Quan, I think it was a catch. Some people might disagree, but I think he had that catch amazing late in the game. Noel had some great plays out there. So I think it'll actually suit the Guardians well to go to Detroit and hopefully pull out a win or two.
Yeah. And one final point I'd like to make on at least yesterday's game. Um, I'm hopeful that for game 3 and 4, um, it seems for the first two games, Stephen Vogt went with uh identical lineups. The only change he made was having Austin Hedges catch for Matthew Boyd, and I'd like to see Kyle Manzardo to start at DH or Will Brennan in right field. I know John Kensington had that incredible throw to keep the pressure off the bases in the middle innings. Um, and I know we've seen Noel with power at the plate, but it would really surprise me if for a third straight game, players like Brennan and Manzardo didn't get their starting debut.
Yeah, we'll see. Obviously they're just gonna have to get a little bit more consistent at bats, going against probably the probable AL Cy Young winner. That's always gonna be tough. But outside of Skubal, Detroit does have solid pitching. They're not quite Skubal. I don't know if anyone else from a starting standpoint is, but not this year. But they're just I think gonna have to string together some at bats. You'd like to see power, but even just you know playing kind of that small ball, I think can be enough.
Yeah, and I've heard and seen that the Guardians are a better uh, I wouldn't say better, but they tend to be more aggressive when it comes to base running than Detroit. I'd like to see if Kwan led off the game with a single, or say if he fouled up, flied out, and then you got Jimenez on base. I'd try and swipe a second base immediately. Um, put pressure on whoever their starter's going to be. They'll likely go with the bullpen arm. It hasn't been posted, but and no road trip is easy, especially in the playoffs. But I think for the Guardians' sake, they need to do anything they can to end the series in Detroit. You don't want to give Skubal the chance to face you game 5, even though you'd have the home field advantage.
Yeah, I agree. He just clearly we know how good he is as a pitcher, and just to be able, obviously we'll take a win and we'll take our chances if we have to. But to not have to face Scooble again would certainly be preferred. Plus you could get a little bit more rest, much needed rest. Um, Nick, anything else to add?
I'd like to make one point on the other ALDS matchup. The Royals Yankees series is now even at 1. The Royals beat the Yankees 4-2, uh, and I'm positive about the stat because I heard it my own 2 ears last night. Surprisingly, Aaron Judge, as powerful as a hitter as he is and threat in his playoff career, it seems his strikeout percentage goes up 35% since he's been in the majors. So I'm positive I've heard that.
Well, they're still a dangerous, scary team. Certainly,
So
Kansas City's tough too. So at this point in the season, it's hard to say you'd rather face one team or the other, but I personally I'd like to see Kansas City go out and win that series.
yes, and it'd be interesting. Of course, we're pulling for the Guardians. It'd be interesting to have an all AL Central race to the World Series.
It would be. And one final note, I've gotten conflicting data just from looking up of what's actually correct, but center field I think might be 412. And left and right center, I'm not positive. But the point is, it's a big field. Guardians can run, they can play defense. Uh, I like Cobb. Nick, what's your prediction for the rest of the series, or at least, yeah, rest of the series?
I think the Guardians will win it in five back in Cleveland. I I have hope that they will get a two-game sweep in Detroit, but this is the playoffs, and we've seen uh, AL and L side. Uh, these games stay close for the most part. Uh, pitcher, uh, excuse me, managers know how to pull the right strings, and when a pitcher gets in a difficult situation, they it always seems more often than not they put in the right pitcher and they escape a jam no matter what team you're watching. Um, Tonight, all American League teams are off, but the Mets will battle the Phillies in City Park, and the Dodgers will travel to uh, the Padres. So all four division matchups are tied at a game apiece. It now comes down to a best of three.
Yep, so you can say October baseball at its finest. So yeah, looking forward to the rest of the series. I'm cautiously optimistic. And then just one final note for the podcast. Kind of the idea was to bring weekly updates with the Browns, but I don't know if people even want to hear that anymore. So we'll be sure to bring some updates and definitely we'll, as the playoffs hopefully continue, we'll bring more updates. We won't have a podcast next week. But hopefully the Guardians are moving forward and we can bring updates at a later date and time. But thank you everyone for listening. You've been listening to the Cleveland Sports Bros podcast.